There are moments in life so cruelly quiet, so deeply personal, that even our own shadow seems too ashamed to follow. These are the moments when the door slams shut, not by accident, but by the deliberate hand of someone you once trusted, someone who once stood beside you, smiling, only to turn away and twist the lock behind them. You didn't just lose an opportunity in that moment, you lost a friend, a partner, a brother, a sister, and yet they didn't blink. They closed that door on you like you were nothing. They watched you knock, hoping, praying, but they didn't open it. They saw your hands trembling as you reached for the handle, only to find it cold, sealed, final. They heard your silent cries, echoing in the corridors of rejection, and still they walked away. Have you ever wondered how someone you believed in could believe so little in you? They saw your potential, and instead of nurturing it, they buried it. They knew the weight of their silence, the sting of their denial, and they enjoyed the power of withholding what they could have easily given: support, kindness, a chance, even just a hand to help you through. But here's what they never understood. Every door they closed on you was not forgotten. Every betrayal, every cold shoulder, every silent dismissal, it was not overlooked by heaven. You see, while they thought they were ending your path, they were merely rerouting your destiny. And now a shift begins, one not of vengeance, but of divine correction. There is a justice that flows deeper than the laws of man, a justice that does not sleep nor slumber, a justice not shouted from rooftops, but whispered through the wind, rustled in the trees, and written in the quiet turns of fate. It does not announce itself, but it never forgets. And it is this divine justice that begins to close doors, not on you, but on them. Those who laughed as you struggled will soon watch doors they depended on vanish before them. Those who used their influence to block your path will now find their own path suddenly uncertain. Those who delighted in your downfall will discover that God does not allow cruelty to flourish unchecked. You may never get an apology. You may never hear them say they were wrong, but you will see it in their lives. You will see the very doors they slammed in your face begin to close in theirs, and not by your hand, but by the hand of the one who saw your pain when no one else did. So, I ask you, what if the betrayal was not your failure, but your redirection? What if the rejection was not a punishment, but a preparation? What if those slammed doors weren't signs of your weakness, but of their test and their failure to pass it? You see, when someone closes a door on a pure heart, on a loyal soul, on someone who was only seeking light, God does not remain silent. He waits, He watches, and when the time is right, He moves. And when He moves, everything shifts. Doors begin to close, not on the innocent, but on the guilty, not on the broken-hearted, but on those who broke them. And now, my dear listener, as the heavens begin to balance what the earth has made uneven, let us look closer at how this truth unfolds. They blocked your opportunity. Now opportunity will evade them. There was a time when your heart beat with hope every time you walked into the room, because you believed with all sincerity that those around you wanted to see you rise. You showed up with pure intentions. You gave your best. You stayed loyal even when it hurt, and yet someone, maybe a mentor, a friend, a relative, or even a partner, chose to block your way. They saw you striving. They saw your effort. But instead of offering a hand, they offered a wall. Instead of lifting you, they labeled you. They looked at your light and feared it would outshine theirs. So, they quietly shut the door that you were just about to walk through. And the worst part? You trusted them. Do you remember the moments you sat in silence, questioning yourself, wondering what you did wrong? The times you begged God to show you why your life felt like a maze with no exit. You didn't realize back then that it wasn't your talent that was lacking. It was their heart. It wasn't your destiny that failed you. It was their ego that couldn't handle your potential. They had influence. They had the power to recommend your name in rooms you couldn't enter yet. They had the chance to share your story, endorse your work, speak a good word on your behalf, but instead they turned the other way. Or worse, they blocked it entirely. You were not overlooked by accident. You were pushed aside by intention. The phone call they never made, the introduction they avoided, the project you were perfect for, but they never told you about, the silent alliances, the politics, the gossip, all designed to keep you just one step behind, because if you got ahead, they would have to face the truth, that you were more gifted, more resilient, more destined for greatness than they ever admitted. And it hurt, didn't it? The betrayal wasn't in the denial itself, it was in the familiarity of the hand that turned the key. But time has a strange way of speaking when people think they've buried their sins in silence. And now, that same power they once held is slipping away. Those same opportunities they used to guard so tightly are vanishing from their reach. They built walls around blessings, thinking they could control who received them, but now they stand outside those same walls, watching doors close that once swung wide at their command. What they took from you is now being taken from them. The meetings are happening without them. The rooms no longer welcome them. The very circle they once used to exclude you is shrinking around them. They speak, but no one listens. They push, but nothing moves. The favor they once misused has fled like a shadow at sunrise. You don't have to wish them harm. You don't even have to watch. Just know this. The opportunities they stole from you have not disappeared. They've been preserved, set aside for a time when your name will be called by mouths they never controlled. And those who stood in your way will stand in line behind you. Let them feel the absence now. Let them know what it means to knock and hear silence, to strive and see no progress, to hunger for doors that no longer open. Because when they blocked your opportunity, they were not just defying you, they were interfering with divine timing. And no one gets away with that forever. They refused to speak for you. Now no one will speak for them. There are few pains more piercing than the silence of someone who could have defended you, but chose not to. You remember the moment clearly. You were being questioned, doubted, maybe even slandered, and they were right there. They knew the truth, they knew your heart, they knew you were innocent, but they said nothing. They could have stood up and said, "I know this person, I vouch for them." But their lips stayed sealed. Maybe it was jealousy, maybe it was cowardice, maybe it was convenience. But the result was the same. Their silence became your sentence. And what made it worse was that you had spoken for them. You had protected them in rooms they never even knew were dangerous. You had defended them behind their backs, guarded their name, covered their weaknesses. You gave them loyalty in private, and they gave you distance in public. How many times did you wait, heart pounding, thinking, "Surely they'll say something, surely they'll speak up." But they didn't. You watched their head bow. You watched them shift uncomfortably. You saw it in their eyes, the choice to protect themselves at your expense. And that wound runs deeper than most. Because betrayal doesn't always come with a knife. Sometimes it comes with silence. And now, that silence has come full circle. They are the ones now under scrutiny. They are the ones being doubted, questioned, misunderstood, and suddenly they look around for someone to defend them, someone to speak up, someone to step forward and say, "I know who they really are." But the room is quiet. That same uncomfortable silence they gave you is now echoing around them, because people remember. Heaven remembers. The ones who watched you suffer in injustice while they stayed silent will now taste the same abandonment they once gave you. Their voice, which held so much power, is now powerless. The respect they once enjoyed is fading. The credibility they once used to silence your truth is crumbling beneath their feet. And here's the thing. They need someone to speak now. They finally understand what it feels like to have your name on trial and no one willing to stand beside it. But they burned every bridge they could have walked back across. They betrayed every person who once would have fought for them, and now they are alone. The whisper that once protected them has fallen silent. You, who cried for someone to speak when you had no strength left, you were ignored. You, who longed for just one person to say, "You're not crazy, you're not wrong, you're not alone," were left abandoned. But your cries were not in vain, because while they were busy choosing silence, heaven was busy keeping record, and in that record, every word they didn't say was written down. There is justice in silence too. There is retribution in absence. And now, what they once withheld from you is being withheld from them, not by you, but by divine orchestration. It's not revenge, it's restoration. Let them sit now in the silence they once sentenced you to. Let them feel the chill of being surrounded by people who know the truth, but say nothing. Let them face the discomfort of being unspoken for, because silence is a mirror, and what they gave, they will now see reflected back at them, clearly, painfully, and without escape. They watched you suffer. Now they will be watched as they struggle. They saw it all. They watched you fall apart piece by piece, your voice growing quieter, your smile fading, your eyes losing their light. You were standing in plain sight, breaking down in silence, hoping someone, anyone, would step in and ask if you were okay. But they just watched, not because they didn't notice, but because they didn't care to intervene. They knew what was happening. They saw the tears you hid behind forced laughter. They saw the weight you carried, the exhaustion in your soul, the tremble in your voice when you said, "I'm fine." And they did nothing. Some even found pleasure in it. Your suffering validated their jealousy. Your weakness made them feel stronger. Instead of helping you up, they leaned back and made themselves comfortable, enjoying the spectacle of your pain like it was entertainment. It wasn't ignorance, it was indifference. And that hurts deeper than betrayal, because they had the power to help and they chose not to. Do you remember the nights you stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, trying to figure out what you did wrong, wondering why the people who claimed to care about you disappeared when it mattered most? You weren't looking for a miracle. You were just looking for someone to say, "I see you, I'm with you." But no one came. They stood by as your world unraveled. Not a hand, not a word, not a whisper of comfort. They let you suffer, even when it cost them nothing to help. That's the part that stings. It wouldn't have cost them anything. But still, they chose silence. Still, they chose distance. And now, things are beginning to shift. The same ones who stood tall while you fell are starting to stumble. The ones who had front row seats to your pain are now stepping onto the same stage. But this time, the roles are reversed. Their strength is fading, their support is vanishing, and their burdens are beginning to multiply, and the world is watching. They are now under the same spotlight they once shined on you. Their struggles are no longer private. Their storms can no longer be hidden behind closed doors. And the silence that once protected them is gone. People notice now. The same way they noticed you but chose to stay quiet is the same way others now see them but don't step in. Because the energy they once poured into avoiding your pain is now returning to them in the form of abandonment. Divine abandonment. The kind that reminds a soul that nothing goes unseen by God. This is not coincidence, this is alignment, a divine alignment of consequence, because God is not blind to the pain you endured. He saw you being ignored while you were breaking. He saw the coldness of their hearts when you needed warmth. He saw the smirks behind your sorrow, the quiet judgment behind your cries, and now he is allowing them to walk through a reflection of what they once applauded. He is allowing their own hearts to feel the weight they once placed on yours. They are feeling what it means to be seen but not helped, to be surrounded but completely alone. And this time, there is no audience to clap for their comfort, only the echo of what they once ignored. Because pain always returns to the doorstep it came from. Not because you asked for it, but because justice has its own way of finding home. They watched you suffer. They stood still as you drowned, and now the tide is turning, and all eyes are on them, not with admiration, but with the same cold indifference they once gave you. They turned others against you, now their circle will turn on them. It wasn't enough for them to walk away from you. No, that would have been too easy. They wanted more. They wanted to make sure others walked away too, so they whispered lies when you weren't there to defend yourself. They painted you in colors that never belonged to you, cold, bitter shades meant to distort your truth and dim your light. You didn't lose people because of who you are. You lost them because someone made it their mission to poison the air before you even walked into the room. They twisted your words. They exaggerated your flaws. They highlighted your worst moments and buried your best ones. And they did it all behind smiles. With carefully chosen words and innocent expressions, they created a version of you that was easier to judge and harder to love. And the people who once laughed with you, shared their secrets with you, sat at your table, those same people began to pull away, not because they saw the truth, but because someone blinded them with false stories. Slowly, you began to feel the distance. Conversations became shorter. Invitations stopped. Trust was replaced with suspicion. And, the worst part, you never got the chance to defend yourself. You were tried and convicted without a trial. You walked into rooms where the atmosphere changed, and you didn't know why. You felt eyes scanning you, not with affection, but with caution. You noticed the hesitation in voices that once called you friend, and you carried that confusion quietly, blaming yourself, questioning what you did wrong, trying to make sense of how love turned into exile. But it wasn't you. It was the betrayal behind your back, the unseen campaign to make you look like a villain in your own story. And now the very people who turned others against you are beginning to feel what it means to be alone in a crowd. The circle they worked so hard to build through manipulation is starting to break. The people they once confided in are now whispering about them. The loyalty they demanded is no longer being returned. One by one, masks are falling, and the alliances they thought were solid are crumbling into dust. Their own web of deception is tightening around them, and this time, there's no one left to blame. You see, when you destroy someone's reputation to elevate your own, it may work for a while, but truth has a long memory, and lies have short legs. Sooner or later, the same tongues used to tear others down begin to speak against their master. They're starting to taste the loneliness they once fed you. People are questioning their words, their intentions, their character. Those who once blindly followed are now beginning to see through the performance. Doubt is creeping in. Suspicion is forming cracks in the foundation of their influence, and slowly their empire of gossip and control is falling apart, brick by brick, word by word, the same way they watched you lose connection with people who once loved you. They're now losing their own support. And the pain, it's not just in being left. It's in knowing that those they trusted no longer trust them. It's in realizing that the loyalty they demanded can't be forced. It's in understanding that what they did to you is now being done to them. with no place to hide, no version of the story that will save them this time. They turned people against you. Now they are the ones surrounded by silence, fake smiles, and shallow loyalty, unsure of who truly stands with them. Because the circle they used as a weapon has become the very battlefield where they now stand alone. They took away your hope. Now they will know hopelessness. Hope is a fragile thing. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't fight to be seen. It quietly holds on, even when everything is falling apart. And that's what you had. Hope. You clung to it when everything else around you was breaking. You believed in the good in people. You believed that things would get better. You believed that the people you loved would love you back, would stand by you, would protect your name, would nurture your heart. But they didn't. Instead, they chipped away at your hope, piece by piece, day by day, word by word. They made you feel like you were reaching too high, dreaming too big, caring too much. They mocked your efforts, dismissed your potential, ignored your growth. They made you feel small for trying, foolish for trusting, weak for hoping. Every time you got back up, they found a new way to knock you back down. Not with fists, but with subtle cruelty, with cold words, with silence that screamed louder than anything else. You looked into their eyes, begging without words, "Just believe in me, just see me, just don't give up on me." But all you got in return was indifference. And it changed you. It made you doubt yourself. It made you question your worth. It made you start to believe the lies they spoke. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I'm not meant to make it. Maybe I'm just a burden. They didn't just take away your confidence. They attacked the root of your hope. And without hope, everything becomes heavier. Days become harder. Life starts to feel like a constant struggle just to breathe. They didn't have to hit you to hurt you. They just had to withhold belief. You began to carry an invisible weight, smiling on the outside while inside you were drowning, trying to act normal, trying to stay strong. But the truth is, their rejection had cut deep. Hope had become a whisper inside you, fading more and more each time you were let down. But the story doesn't end there, because now the tables are turning. The ones who made you feel foolish for believing are beginning to lose their own sense of direction. The ones who rolled their eyes at your passion are now staring into the emptiness of a life that feels meaningless. The joy they once faked is now truly gone. The confidence they wore like armor is cracking, and for the first time, they're starting to understand what it means to feel hopeless. Their plans are failing. Their efforts aren't working. The very doors they used to walk through with ease are closing without warning. They wake up, but there's no excitement in the morning. They move through the day, but it all feels grey. And the worst part? No one sees it. Just like they never saw your pain, now they sit in the silence they created. Only now, it's echoing back. They once laughed at your dreams, but now their own have turned into dust. They once told you to give up, and now life is telling them the same. That voice inside them, the one that always told them they were in control, is quiet now. Doubt is louder. Fear is louder. The emptiness they forced you to feel is now sitting with them, uninvited but permanent. Hope, once denied, now denies them. And just as they once stood over you, looking down, unmoved by your silent suffering, now they find themselves reaching out into the same darkness, wondering if anyone will care enough to pull them out. They closed the door to belonging. Now they will be locked out there. Was a time when all you wanted was to belong. Not to be praised, not to be worshipped, just seen, heard, included. You weren't asking for much, only a place at the table, a seat in the circle, a voice in the room. But instead they closed the door. They made you feel like an outsider in spaces you helped build, like a stranger among those you once called family. It wasn't always loud, and it wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it came in the form of unspoken glances, inside jokes you were never part of, conversations that stopped when you walked in. You felt it, not just in your mind but in your chest, a slow suffocation of the soul, an ache that whispered, "You're not wanted here." You tried, didn't you? You tried to fit in. You bent, folded, even broke parts of yourself just to match their world. You smiled when you were hurting. You agreed when you should have spoken up. You silenced your voice so theirs could be heard, all in the name of being accepted, all in the hope that they would one day look at you and say, "You matter, you belong." But that day never came. They made you feel like you were always one step outside the circle, and after a while, that rejection becomes something deeper. It doesn't just hurt, it starts to define you. You begin to wonder if there's something wrong with you, if you're too much, too different, not enough. You carry the weight of invisible rejection, questioning why you are never enough for them to keep around. They made you doubt your worth, not by what they said, but by what they didn't say. And now they're starting to feel what they once made you feel. The doors that once swung open for them with ease are now tightly shut. The people who once surrounded them have grown cold. The rooms they used to walk into with confidence now feel unfamiliar, even hostile. Their invitations are lost in the noise. Their presence, once welcomed, is now politely tolerated, or worse, completely ignored. They are beginning to feel that same sting of exclusion they once imposed on you. It's subtle at first, a missed message, a gathering they weren't invited to, a conversation they weren't included in, but slowly it becomes clear. They are no longer at the center. They are no longer the ones people look for. They are no longer the voice in the room that others wait to hear. They are now standing on the outside of a world they thought they owned. And that sense of disconnection, the one they fed you daily, is now their constant companion. They scroll through photos of people they used to be close with and wonder when the shift happened. They ask themselves what changed. But the truth is, the change began when they decided you didn't deserve to belong. You see, God doesn't forget the hearts that were cast aside. When you were isolated, He was watching. When you were left out, He took note. When you were excluded, humiliated, or treated like a burden, He was already planning the shift. And now the ones who took away your seat at the table are finding there's no longer one for them. They closed the door of belonging on you, and now that same door is closing on them. Not slammed, not forced, but quietly, steadily, unavoidably, just like they did to you. And the worst part? They're finally realizing that belonging isn't something you can control, gatekeep, or buy. It's something you either offer freely or lose forever. They thought no one was watching, but heaven was taking notes. There's a kind of cruelty that grows bold in the absence of accountability. They believed they could treat you however they pleased, and no one would ever notice. No one would ever stop them. No one would ever call them out. They moved in shadows, whispered behind closed doors, smiled in public and stabbed in private, thinking their actions would never echo back to them. Because you stayed quiet, because you kept your dignity, because you chose not to fight the way they did. And so they mistook your silence for weakness. They assumed your silence was permission. They believed that because you didn't scream, you didn't bleed, but you did. And not just once. Again and again they cut into your spirit, slowly, subtly, sometimes with words, sometimes with silence, sometimes with actions so small they almost escape the eye, but not the heart. Every wound they inflicted was marked by one cruel certainty. They thought no one would ever know, that no one was watching. They were wrong. Because while they were weaving webs of deceit and planting seeds of sabotage, heaven was taking notes. Every lie they told to damage your name, every opportunity they stole with a fake smile, every time they rejoiced at your pain and clapped for your failure, every single moment of betrayal was witnessed, not just by you, but by the one who sees what man cannot, by the God who looks beyond polished faces and examines hearts, by the judge who records not just what is done in the light, but especially what is done in the dark. You were not alone in that pain. You were not alone in that room. You were not abandoned to be their victim. Heaven was documenting every detail, and now the record is being read aloud in their life. They are starting to feel it, not as punishment, but as a reminder that nothing done in secret stays buried. Their lives are beginning to unravel in ways they can't explain. Doors are closing for reasons they don't understand. Relationships are crumbling. Peace is disappearing. There is an unease in their soul, an anxiety that creeps in when they least expect it. They can't trace it back to anything specific, but deep down they know. They know it's connected. They feel the weight of what they once dismissed. Because heaven's notes are not just records, they are blueprints for justice. Quiet justice, divine justice. Justice that does not scream, but strikes with precision. Justice that waits patiently for the right time to restore what was lost and reverse what was done, and that time has come. You see, they thought your kindness was naivety. They thought your compassion was foolishness. They thought because you didn't seek revenge, there would be no consequences. But justice doesn't require your hands. It only requires your endurance. And now, while they toss and turn in confusion, while their plans collapse without warning, while their peace drains like water through cracked fingers, heaven remains silent, watching, just as it did when you cried alone. But this time, it is not you who is suffering in silence. It is them. And their silence is louder than any scream. Because nothing haunts a person more than knowing they cannot undo what was done, and that someone higher is now undoing them. They try to erase the truth. They try to bury your story. But heaven has a memory that never forgets. And now, the very things they built through manipulation, deceit, and cruelty, those things are being dismantled, slowly, quietly, completely. They lived like no one was watching, but heaven was. They spoke as if their words would vanish in the air, but heaven recorded them. They acted as if their cruelty was justified, but heaven has written their debt, and it's being paid. And here you are, still standing, still breathing, still rising. Because while they thought you were alone in your pain, heaven was already preparing your restoration. God will close every door for them that they closed on you. You were never invisible. You were never forgotten. Every tear you cried behind closed doors, every silent ache you carried when no one checked in, every moment you were pushed aside, betrayed, mocked, or made to feel unworthy, it was seen, and not just by you, not just by your reflection in the mirror, but by the God who watches in silence and moves in justice. They closed doors on you with arrogance. They shut you out with confidence, thinking that their power was final. But what they didn't realize was that God always has the final word, and what they thought was the end of your story was only the beginning of His intervention. You endured what should have broken you. You walked through shame, rejection, abandonment, betrayal, and still your heart beat with hope. You still chose kindness. You still chose love. You still chose to wait on God when you could have turned bitter. And now is your season of divine reversal. The very doors they slammed in your face will now be closed to them. The peace they robbed from you will now flee from them. And you will rise. You will enter new rooms, rooms they tried to keep you out of. You will be called by names they tried to tarnish. You will receive blessings they thought they had the power to block, because God never needed their permission to bless you. He only needed your pain to complete His promise. And know this, what they closed, God will now close to them. And what was meant for your destruction has become the foundation of your destiny. Justice has arrived, and this time it's in your favor.